Welcome back to the Point of Order podcast, an inside look at California politics and the state legislature. I am your host, Assemblyman Josh Hoover, and, well, we're coming back from spring break, and nobody wants to come on the podcast this week, so we're hanging out with the team this week. We have Sara Hilliker from my office, as well as Enrique Govea, and excited to have you guys.
Happy to be here.
Yeah,
Great to be back.
Yeah, thanks. I know we've had you on before.
Few times.
And looking forward to running through some stuff. But let's just get started with an easy one.
Okay.
What did you guys do for spring break? I mean, it's spring break. This sounds way cooler when you say spring break versus like spring recess, which is
Yeah.
But like, did you guys do anything fun while the legislature was gone for a week?
Yeah, I sure did. Well, for us, I guess at the staffer level, still like work still goes on, so we still have our own work to do related to our bills. We still have meetings, but there is more of a slower pace in the sort of just area as a whole. So that's kind of nice. I had the pleasure of taking care of our chief of staff's dog this past week, Luna, who is
While she was having fun.
exactly. She was in Mexico having a nice time.
Yeah.
And she's a beautiful pit mix, so I had a nice time.
Yeah.
Last week.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's a really great time to catch up because we don't have committee or floor sessions. So great time to catch up on all the work, take a couple meetings, but things kind of move at a slower pace, which is a nice change up from the busy season. So
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we kind of come right back into things now. So
For sure. Yeah.
good.
No, I just realized I invited the two people on that didn't go anywhere. You know,
Yes.
like, we had staff that was like all in Mexico and
Yeah,
stuff. And
the
Yeah.
least
fun
exciting
stuff.
answers.
It's funny though. I mean, I said to our chief of staff, Teresa, she has a really nice house and she has a pool in the back, really nice backyard. Hung out with her dog. So I would say to her, who's really going on vacation here? Because
Yeah.
I'm having a great time.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's like an upgrade. That's
I
fair.
embraced
Yeah.
it, Yeah, that's all you could do.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What's
Yeah.
nice? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, go
Oh,
on.
go ahead.
Well, what's just nice about the slower season is that you can kind of get out of the building, go on walks. I
Yeah.
did that a lot more, which is nice, and kind of walk around downtown a little bit.
That's
so,
cool. Yeah.
which you don't always get the chance to do during busy season.
Exactly. It's also nice to just kind of like catch up with people that you've been meaning to have coffee or lunch with.
Yeah.
Because usually, throughout the session, you'll say, hey, let's catch up, let's grab lunch, let's grab coffee. But then your work comes on, and then similar for them,
All
you
of
just
that
never
goes out the
always,
window,
you don't always get to it. So that was really
For
nice
sure,
to
yeah.
see people.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was also in Mexico, but not like fun Mexico. So I went with my church, and we were
Yeah.
building houses and doing some other stuff. And my son was down, my oldest was down there with me, which was cool.
Yeah.
But I slept on a cot for a week. I've got mosquito bites all up and down my arms right now
Yes.
that are not
imagine.
feeling great. And then,
Yeah.
but no, overall it was a good time.
Yeah.
And good experience, but and then I threw my back out on Saturday.
Oh, wow.
Going back to the gym.
Oh, no.
So I'm
Just
like,
this past Saturday?
Yeah, I'm like, man, but it's all good. It's
Yeah.
all good. It was a good break. It was nice not having to be in the Capitol, honestly.
Yeah.
So
It's
sorry,
a nice
guys.
breath of fresh air. Yeah. No, again, it's still nice.
Yeah.
You get to walk around a little bit more than before.
Yeah.
So you still
Yeah.
you get to have a nice
Didn't
time.
have to be in the Capitol.
Yeah.
So that was all good.
That's nice.
And,
Well,
yeah, good to be back with the family, though. So how is the year going so far for you guys in terms of, I mean, you guys are both obviously former Assembly fellows,
Yeah.
now full-fledged, Assembly staffers. What has it been like this year, kind of being like a full-on staffer? Like, give us the staff perspective, because I feel like
Okay.
on this podcast, we always talk about, like, the stuff we do, but really you guys do a lot of the work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can start.
Sure.
This is my third legislative session. Second year with yourself. I always say that, and I'm still really new in learning the process and sort of the nuances that come about related to the process. I feel that I'm at a level where I've really gotten a grip of the basics and am familiar with what the legislative process entails. But with each bill in each different session that you're staffing, it involves different circumstances, different issues, different stakeholders that you're working with. So I'm staying busy. I'm more familiar with the process, but it's also just that point of the year where things are really picking up.
Yeah,
it's
crazy
the legislative
right now.
season, or it's the season, as folks say in the Capitol. So getting more and more confident, but still, you just got to be on top of your work as much as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's April is crazy. April's been crazy. And I know we're, not only working on our legislation, but also doing a lot of the the committee hearings that we have and prepping for those and sitting in
yeah.
those and all that good stuff. So it's been a crazy time for sure. How about you, Sarah?
Well, I guess
You
if
get
I
all
could,
the hard bills.
I get
how'd that
I get the
happen?
fun bills. Yeah, they have their unique challenges. But no, I guess if I could take this opportunity to brag, I would say that being a fellow in our office with you
Yeah.
is a very, very good experience that really teaches you what it's like to be a staffer. I can't speak to other fellows' experiences, but when you're a fellow in our office, you are treated as a staffer. You have a lot of agency over the work that you do. There's a lot of room to grow and learn and fail if necessary. So this is my second year. First year was a fellow and now second year with you. Yeah. And the transition is way easier than I imagined it would
that's
be.
good. Yeah.
It really is, yeah. Because fellows in our office, as you know, they're not treated as any old intern doing, chores or whatnot. It's you really get to get your hands on the work and play a big role in the team. And so taking on those additional roles kind of just lets you continue to flex those muscles that you pick up on and start to learn as a fellow. So it's definitely busier than it was last year just because I have a couple more responsibilities, but it's great to feel prepared for that and to know that your fellow year was impactful in that way. And then those challenges are more exciting than daunting, I would say. So really busy season, but as you know, the year is either really, really busy or it can be really, really slow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we certainly get our rest time in.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have the busyness. It kind of keeps things
totally.
going.
Totally.
So
Yeah, if they could just even it out a little more, that'd be nice. But,
Yeah.
I know, yeah.
Spread it
Well,
out a
They
little.
could.
Really quick to your earlier point too, I think a fellow, when they're coming in, they want to get as much of the experience more than less, right? They want to, at least speaking for myself, and different fellows have different goals, but I wanted to dive deep into the legislative process and learn it as much as I can. I wanted to stay in the building following my fellowship. So for me, it meant a lot to, learn on the job. And we fortunately have a fellow in our office this
Yeah.
year, and we like to say amongst ourselves that we're kind of like an office of fellows now.
Yeah.
So
We
you-
kind of
you-
are, right?
We are.
Kyla Holiday, our,
Yeah.
Yeah.
our assembly fellow, yeah.
So
Three
you tend
generations.
you tend to gravitate fellows.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
and definitely
ways.
a plug, I guess, for the fellowship program. Definitely if there's anyone out there in college right now that's looking for an opportunity post college, right? Like, check out the Assembly Fellowship, the Senate Fellowship program. They have the Judicial and the Executive Fellowship as
Yep.
well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Just an awesome program. It's all through Sac State, right?
Yes.
Is that
Yeah.
the
Yes, it's a
kind of the
post-grad-
home of the program? Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. Post-grad program administered through Sac State.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but anyone can apply though. You don't have to be a Sac State student or anything.
No,
so it's
no.
Nor a
just
political science major.
yeah,
Yes.
I'm a
Yeah.
big believer in it. I never actually was a fellow, but I got the opportunity to work with a lot of the fellows.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in the program.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's exciting. So,
Yeah. It's good.
well, hey, let's dive in because we had a busy week. So we'll mow through this stuff
Okay.
All right.
and get back to work, I guess. But stories of the week this week. So I think the big one this week that I saw, I was sitting with very little cell service in Mexico last week, and I saw this come through that Valero has announced that it is actually going to be closing another refinery in California. So let me just open this up here, but. So this has been like a kind of an ongoing saga of of issues with our oil supply in California. We've had a few announce their closure in the past. Valero has one of the biggest refineries in California in Benicia. So they're saying by April 2026, they have notified the California Energy Commission that they will go idle, restructure, or cease refining operations at that facility. This kind of got the governor's attention pretty quickly. I think, for good reason. And he put out a statement. I don't have it in front of me, but essentially it was like, we're working really hard to figure out how we can fix this problem. I mean, I think we've been warning the governor that, there's a lot of ways, there's only a few ways to fix this problem, and you got to kind of fix your policies, right? But we have really made it difficult for these refineries to operate and remain operable in California. And so this is a big piece of news. So we'll put it in the show notes, but this San Francisco Chronicle article talks about this Valero facility as well as Phillips 66, which also has a facility that is likely going to shut down. Between those two facilities alone, California could lose about 20% of its oil refining capacity in the next year, which is absolutely devastating for the oil market, and really devastating for consumers who are ultimately going to pay a higher price when the demand remains the same, but the supply drops that substantially.
Exactly.
Right? So
no, that's a good point.
Huge problems.
It's not only the two entities that we're losing, but it's the disruption that it causes with the other refineries and the network as a whole.
Yeah, and I think public perception always plays a huge role in stories such as this. As someone being relatively new to the legislature, I always think about my time before working here and how we perceive these articles as people who work in the building versus people who don't, and how much scarier news such as this can be for your everyday Californian who's thinking about affordability and prices and raising families and all that good stuff. It's different. I mean, we kind of get that inside look, but they don't always have that.
Well, a lot of people are just going to see the impact, right? They're not going to actually even read this story, probably, right? But the impact is very real, and it's very much a product of public policy. It's so interesting because we have the highest standards for refinement, oil refinement in the world in California.
Right.
We do it better and cleaner than anyone else does it. And yet, when things like this happen, it's not like we start using 20% less oil, right? Instead, we have to get that oil from elsewhere.
Exactly.
So we get it from other countries that do it much dirtier, much less efficiently, and then we, ship that oil across, burning more fossil fuels to ship it across the ocean so that we can get it here in our ports. I mean, it really defies logic.
It is. Yeah.
I totally understand the goal of a clean energy future, but you have to have a bridge to get there. And this is, oil has to be a part of that. And so, I think even the governor would acknowledge that if he was being honest. But the reality is that, we have to do better to make sure we can keep refining here and keep prices lower. I was in Arizona a few weeks ago, and it was like a couple bucks cheaper.
Yeah, I know. You texted us the picture. That was
Yeah,
nice to see.
It was like, really, guys? Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And it's just our consumers are paying this premium to be in California to accomplish something, to do something that's really not accomplishing, anything, right?
Right.
Well, it's also important to consider the recent study by USC, which indicated that it's, our policy is not necessarily price gouging that is increasing the price. So I'm hoping that, the resources or data would be available so that our lawmakers.
Well, that was fun because, the legislature passed their big price gouging bill last year.
Correct.
Was it last year, I think? Yeah. And then they still haven't used it because there's just no evidence of it. So
the problem.
And if they are doing it, it's only in California, apparently. So it's tough. In a related story, there was actually a big bill up 2 weeks ago. California lawmakers actually blocked. There was, I think, bipartisan sort of concern around this bill that would have basically made oil and gas companies liable for damages to homes from natural disasters caused by climate change. Another bill that would have really I think had a big impact on prices. The good news is that bill actually died, which I think is good. This is exactly why these refineries are closing, because we pass bills like this that increase liability, that make it impossible for these companies to operate. And then we were like, well, why don't we have any? Why is our gas so expensive?
Right, right.
Yeah.
So thankfully that bill stalled for the year, which is good news. But the fact that, I imagine it will come back at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to your point earlier, there's nothing wrong with pursuing, sustainable, environmentally friendly practices and such, but to assume that legislation operates in a bubble and doesn't have real ramifications for the public. I mean, that's the unfortunate side of these things, is that we see legislators work on policies such as this and yes, there's admirable qualities to it, and I'm sure great messaging points and such, but they have real impacts on people and negative ones at that should really be at the forefront of the conversation.
For sure.
Yeah, and market forces.
Yeah.
Speaking of price increases, there's another new bill that would allow Uber and Lyft drivers to unionize.
Yeah.
I believe the bill number is AB 1340. Definitely, again, a policy choice that is going to lead to price increases for consumers if that were to happen. But even more so, I think this, my take on this is that it's actually going to be really bad for drivers. Because the moment that this bill passes and that some of these groups actually unionize, I know that these companies are going to accelerate and continue to accelerate into autonomous vehicles, right? I just rode, Waymo around Arizona, and it's working really great. I mean, obviously, it's not in every market yet, but that is going to be accelerated for sure if this bill passes.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think it's a lot. To me, this rings a lot like the fast food minimum wage increase, right? Where it's like, well, we need a $20 minimum wage for fast food workers, which, to be honest with you, the market simply can't support. People can't support paying those food prices. A lot of fast food businesses have closed as a result of that because they just can't afford to stay open. But in the ones that have stayed open, a lot of them have really embraced, new technologies that require fewer workers. And at the end of the day, you end up getting fewer jobs, not necessarily, a better situation. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It also I think it's important to acknowledge a factor or a reason as to why many drivers want to drive for Uber or Lyft, and it's that they want to choose when and they can choose their hours, And I believe this, should this bill become law, that would effectively remove that.
Yeah,
Opportunity.
that's a good point. I mean, the independence, the flexibility. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of the Uber Lyft sort of model, right?
Why
Is
not have
people do it.
diversity of jobs? And
well, and you have a lot of
experience.
competition in the market where, like, if you feel like you're not getting paid enough in one, there's other options out there, or you can do different, services and different things. So, I definitely. It's definitely going to affect that independence for sure.
Yeah, it'll have implications.
Another bill that got introduced. So, have you guys used these AI chatbots? Do we know?
No.
Not a whole lot, but I'm familiar
I've only
with
heard
them.
stories, but like there's a bill that's been introduced to kind of put some guardrails and some regulations around AI chatbots where you can basically have full-on conversations with people.
Yeah.
I haven't used them myself, but there are some that are designed in some really interesting ways, like to kind of mimic a relationship. There's some that are designed to mimic like a therapist. Just like some really, I would say, uncharted waters when it comes to human nature and how this is going to interact with our psyches and things like that. So, but we'll see on this legislation if it moves forward. But I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on that.
I think it's difficult to work on policy around new technology because there's always this problem with defining our terms. So in this article I was looking at, they were talking about how do you define companion, right? Because it's these companion, chat bots. in a bunch of different forms, as you talked about. So how are they going to define companion? When is it considered, more of sort of mimicking a human relationship or such? So always really hard to put guardrails around something that doesn't really have clear terms even.
Yeah, good point.
So just curious to see how that'll kind of work itself out and what sort of support and opposition that'll bring to the table.
Yeah.
As people
fight
over that.
This is a bill and an issue that I'll try to monitor and track closely. I guess what I've gathered from my time in the legislature and previously staffing privacy when you sat on that committee is that, what I've gathered is that this technology, as sophisticated as it is, it's here and it's here to stay, and we don't really know what it fully entails, but the legislature are actively trying to, protect people's privacy where there is a role to do. But also not stifle the industry that it's still very early in its infancy, So I don't have a hard stance on that, but AI is an issue that I'm grappling to understand as a whole.
Yeah, and I'm a big AI fan. I use it a lot just for other purposes, not these chatbots, but definitely a big fan of like the efficiencies that it can create and want to see that innovation continue. But I think there's always things with new technologies you have to protect against. I think it's that way with social media. It's that way with cell phones. It's that way with these chatbots probably as well. So there's this main chatbot is character.ai. Again, not familiar with it, but a 14-year-old had committed, the bill was spurred kind of, this 14-year-old had taken his own life after having a conversation with one of these. It's a chatbot that allows you to create and interact with digital characters and mimic real and fictional people. And so the bill is AB, 243, and basically require the operators of these platforms to report the number of times that the chatbots bring up suicide ideation or other actions like that. And so it'll be interesting to see. I'm actually interested in having this conversation because I do think it's worthwhile to at least talk about this and what the state can do to better protect people. And some of this stuff that I've heard about is pretty wild. Like you can actually create an AI chatbot that mimics a loved one that has passed, right? And so you can have actual conversations with a family member, not actual conversations, but you can have what feels like actual conversations with a family member, that isn't around anymore, which I can see how like in a human way, there would be a real desire for that, right? And especially if it's someone you loved and were close to. But also like, what are the health implications of that? What are the mental health sort of impacts of that? I think, right? Not allowing yourself to maybe move on from that, right? So I don't know. It's a really, I'm not
That's fascinating.
Qualified probably to speak on that, but it's definitely it's really interesting.
I was gonna say I think I've seen that movie through your description.
Oh yeah, right?
Well, no, it's just that's a good point. I mean, just brief point, and maybe an unpopular opinion, and it's related to AI being so early in its infancy. But I mean, I would just, raise the question: at one point, is there a parental role? So that's the only thing I would raise.
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
Yeah, I think the conversation starts to look a lot different when children get involved. And I think that's for anything across the board. I think that's a common struggle we see in the legislature is I think that what could be a very helpful resource for an adult maybe becomes something that is overwhelming or, misguiding for a young person who maybe hasn't had the life experiences required to know what's real and what's not. And to your point about, this technology being able to mimic conversations with maybe a loved one that has passed, do we expect, our young people to be able to distinguish the difference there in the way that an adult would? I just think it's interesting because we've spent so many years of our life studying the human psyche and how we process and how we grieve and all these good things. And we kind of do that with the expectation that this is life and this is reality, and all these new technologies kind of bring in a new reality that I think kind of sends all of that off the rails. Because when we have a new reality and we have these artificial realities, then, to your point of grieving, that's a very different process, because you have that loved one and maybe they're able to mimic them in such a way that you feel like they're still there, and maybe you never go through that grieving process. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I mean, at one point, is it unhealthy?
It's pretty wild. It does seem to me like unnatural, right?
Yes.
In a way
think
that
that's a good way of putting it.
raises red flags for me.
Yeah.
I'm not, again, I can't speak to whether it's good or bad, but it just feels like a red flag.
Yeah.
It feels like there is something to say about, going through that grieving process, the importance of that to your kind of your well-being, right?
And for your own growth and development.
So it'll be interesting. Another story here, really one that's going to kind of take center stage over the next few months, potentially. There was an executive order from the federal government to identify essentially what they're calling unconstitutional acts or things that are preempted by federal law. They are looking into programs, climate programs specifically in different states, to see what is federally preempted or what they will deem federally preempted. One of the ones that got singled out was California's cap and trade program, which is a market-based system created in 2012 under Governor Jerry Brown at the time, that is kind of California's main way of, I think they would say, combating climate change from in a market-based way.
Yeah.
It sets caps on greenhouse gas emissions, and then it allows companies to buy and sell credits. Basically, so if you're gonna, if you're gonna go past your cap, you can purchase credits from another company that maybe is not going to go past their cap, and use that to kind of even out and stay in business and keep operating. 12 other states have adopted something similar. This is a big topic right now because cap and trade is something that is going to expire in, I believe, 2030. And so there's a lot of conversations going on right now about its potential reauthorization. And so the timing of this is interesting because this was already going to be a conversation in California. Should we reauthorize this program? I think there's, in a perfect world, there's a lot of people that would say, no, we should not reauthorize cap and trade. We should just allow markets to function normally. And I think, in a vacuum, I think that makes a lot of sense. The trouble is that in California, the alternative to cap and trade is a much more bureaucratic and regulatory kind of structure that is much more command and control, is going to be much harder on businesses in our state, will not offer them flexibility to continue operating. It's basically, you're going to get the requirements and the caps without any options. And so, I think that's where California has, it's a much more complicated conversation on what path California should take, particularly given the political makeup and, kind of the makeup of the legislature. And so, something to keep an eye on, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it more on the podcast in the next few weeks.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like a pick your poison type of deal here. So
right.
A little bit.
Yeah. That'll be.
Let's see. So I don't know if you guys saw this one, and we'll wrap these up. Just a couple more here. The insurance commissioner came out on a return to office mandate and made a decision that they are not going to go with the governor's suggestion, which requires state workers to come back 4 days a week starting in, I believe, July. And the insurance commissioner is instead going to continue, obviously with in-person work where necessary and remote work where it makes sense as well. I think I would argue a more balanced approach to the problem or the situation. So I thought that was interesting that he kind of bucked the governor on that. And we'll see if it has any impact on the governor's policy, which is now being ruled as potentially problematic. In another story, which I don't have in here, was a decision by the Public Employee Relations Board that basically said that they're not sure if the governor actually has the authority to do this without some sort of conversation with state employees and agencies. So another story that I've been watching pretty closely because it impacts a lot of my constituents that, you know, I've actually had some really passionate phone calls with constituents that are like, hey, we work so incredibly efficiently from home. We have way more technology. We have multiple screens. We have a very integrated workflow with our teams. And if we're forced to go back to a state office building with an old Dell computer, a single screen, and like be expected to do all the same work, you know, it's going to harm productivity, right? And and these are people that like I know personally. So these are not like people that, you know, I mean, there's a lot of, I think, different opinions on who state workers are, but the reality is a lot of them are very passionate about their jobs and work very hard. So it's going to be interesting.
Oh, we hear it directly.
Yeah.
We've had many conversations.
I'm sure you
with
guys
their
have gotten a lot of calls too,
to this
right?
day. Many from individuals who are state workers.
Yeah.
And I think it's a point that you may have raised in the past. That are there jobs where people can work better and more efficiently in the office? Sure, but are there other jobs that people can you know, do the same working from home? Absolutely. So at the very least, providing the flexibility to agencies is a better start. And state workers that I've at least spoken to agree with that at the very least.
Yeah, no, it just makes sense. I mean, look, the private sector has the flexibility to do what makes sense, right? And in a lot of cases, they are bringing people back, and in some they are not. You know, our job, your job, and my job is one that pretty much has to be done in person. There's not really another option. Although they tried during COVID, but it didn't work very well. It's a very in-person job, and that will continue to be the case for a lot of jobs. But I think for jobs that, you know, don't really require anything except for, you know, kind of a workspace and can be done remotely, I think you have to embrace that. And it allows the state to remain competitive for a workforce. And it also obviously saves money for people on commuting, on parking, on all kinds of different things. So it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. The deadline to figure all this out is, well, the order kicks in July. And so I think there's still some stories to be seen on this. And then we also have our audit coming out in a month or so on the effectiveness of remote work.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye out.
Yeah.
We'll see, more to come. I don't know if you guys saw, so a couple, well, I won't really dive into this, but Oakland Mayor's race happened over the weekend. Barbara Lee was declared the winner. She defeated another Democrat. Well, she's obviously a former congressperson and long time kind of in the Democratic establishment. She defeated, I would say, a more reform-minded Democrat in Oakland who lost by, I would say, a small margin, although it kind of got bigger as the updates came in. I won't dive too far into that other than I think Oakland has gone from someone that's not really helping things to someone that's probably going to maintain that status quo. And so it is unfortunate, especially as we've seen kind of the mayor's races across the state in these big cities really be kind of the, I don't know, like they've really been kind of the change agents, right? Like voters have been like electing change agents. And in this case, it didn't go that way. So, you know, I think it's interesting. I think we'll see, but it will provide a good compare and contrast, I think, between some of her other Bay Area counterparts. I think Lurie in San Francisco and Mahan in San Jose, and then you're going to have Oakland, and you're really going to be able to see what leadership actually means and what it actually does. And, you know, so it'll be really interesting. I think the next few years are going to be interesting to watch how that plays out. Last story here, though. Let's see. There was a poll done by Politico and UC Berkeley's Citrin Center. I don't know if you guys saw this, but it basically polled Californians on a bunch of different topics. I just wanted to touch on it briefly because I thought some of them were kind of interesting. So let's see. Political professionals are far more interested in fighting the Trump administration than rank and file voters. That was an interesting finding. 43% of voters have little to no confidence that the state can take on its most pressing issues.
It's not good.
So not great.
That's a chunk.
Insiders were more supportive than voters of California's authority to set its own nation-leading emission standards. This is kind of going back to that conversation of like, I think all this stuff, like the cap and trade and like some of the other policies we work on here, it really is something that is very popular in the policy space, not so much in the voter space, because in a lot of cases it does tend to increase costs and make it harder to operate a business and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's see. What else? Voters largely back California's high-speed rail project, even as it faces scrutiny. I always say the devil's in the details on that one because it depends. I haven't actually read the question they asked, but we've done this on here where we've had other polls where there's a slim majority support, so like 53, 54%. But the question is like, do you support a train from San Francisco to LA? Well, sure. Like in theory, sure.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
What's the execution though? Like,
Yeah.
you're asking voters or you're asking people to share their opinion on something that's not actually happening.
Yeah.
So it's a bit
Exactly. You always have to ask.
Nicely
the
framed question.
This is an interesting one. Registered voters are less optimistic than insiders about AI's promise for the economy and California's competitiveness.
That one's interesting.
Yeah.
But they tend to be more bullish on AI if they've used it. So like if they've kind of experienced it,
Yeah.
maybe they're a little more like, oh, this could be kind of interesting and helpful,
Yeah.
right?
I guess
So-
that makes sense. Those who
Yeah.
haven't used it can be more hesitant and more sketched out about it, I guess, until
exactly.
you actually use it.
I've definitely experienced that. People I know who have
Yeah.
used it tend to really like it and see it as
Yeah.
being a
Oh,
very
yeah.
helpful resource. And those I know who haven't used it tend to be afraid of it.
Yeah.
Like very concerned.
Yeah, because in theory, it sounds kind of like this mysterious sort of weird thing, right?
Yeah.
But it's, that's kind of interesting.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a funny one.
So last one here. What is the title of this? The Exodus That Wasn't. Basically, they asked voters like who still uses X, or they asked in the poll they asked who still uses X. And X still enjoys equally bipartisan use among Californians looking for information about state politics, despite criticism that, and for example, I think we talked about this in the last episode, the Assembly Democrats announced they're not going to be on X anymore because it's just so terrible. But according to this poll, it's not an echo chamber. It's actually very balanced. Let's see, what is it? About 45% of state voters view it as most reliant on social media for info on state government. That's kind of and it's still a very even split. I will say, I think from the Democrats' perspective, I get why they feel like it's a little different than it used to be, because it actually used to lean pretty heavily left. And now it's kind of 50-50, which I think definitely changes the conversation, but I think for the better in a lot of ways, because you don't have an imbalance.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting to see that.
Yeah.
That
I
it went
guess
from
when
like a
you're
70-30 platform to like a 50-50 platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I guess when you're so used to seeing, content that resonates with you, you get used to that. When you get a balanced approach, it just seems like it's not for whatever reason. I don't know.
No, I don't think they're reacting to a rising majority. I think they're reacting to losing their majority.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah.
probably equally alarming, but, to your everyday person, probably a good thing that there's a more balanced narrative going on the app.
Or maybe commonly getting ratioed makes you think that there's more people against you than like those who agree with you.
It's a fair point. Enrique, explain for those that don't know what the term ratioed means.
Ratioed is when you post something like on X, and say you get a number of likes, but you get a response or a greater number of responses contrary to your point, or I guess giving you flack.
Got it.
And there's way more like support or likes on that response.
Yeah. So
That is ratio for
there
the
you go.
viewership.
That's why I have you guys here. You gotta teach us. You gotta teach me these things. I have heard.
Happy to.
I've seen the term and learned the term ratio, but there's still some ones I'm still trying to figure out.
I should have given a heads up for the viewers.
Yeah. A humbling experience.
But yeah, I thought it was interesting. We'll see. I think X still remains the quickest source for a lot of different things. News, really anything California politics. That's where all the reporters are.
Yeah.
I'm on it regularly to check in on updates on that stuff. So it remains I think a fantastic and very efficient place for that. More so than you can get on pretty much any other platform. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. So all right, let's dive into Babylon Bee headlines. You guys ready for this?
Yes.
All right. Excited for this
Satirical relief. All right, here we go. So, by the way, the Pope died this morning, which super sad.
yeah.
I didn't have it in my notes, but definitely
Those are some news,
a sad
to see
day
today.
and a big piece of news this week as well. So,
Yeah.
definitely heart goes out to, all the Catholics out there and just the Pope's family and all of that. So,
Yeah. That was tragic.
let's see. Oh man, I always do this without looking at them, so it's like, because I just want to
So you react on the spot?
Yeah.
some of them are so hard. They're just not. Yeah. This is good. So we just passed Easter, right? Happy Easter to everybody
Likewise.
that celebrates. Roman authorities investigating Jesus for violating stay in tomb order. That's pretty good.
That's good.
That's pretty good.
That's a good one.
St. John signs lucrative Nike endorsement after beating St. Peter to tomb. That's funny. These are some very Easter themed ones
Yeah.
this week.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh man, some of these are rough. Okay, this one's pretty funny. All right, so bear with me. Liberals warn enforcing immigration law is a slippery slope that may lead to enforcing other laws.
Wow.
I did see that one, and I was like, wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty rough.
That's
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
saying the quiet bit out loud.
Yeah,
Isn't that what people say?
Local dad has to be forcibly removed from World War II Air Museum.
Wow.
That's always a good one.
Yeah.
Dads are awesome.
Sounds like something my dad would go through.
Let's see. Oh, this is a good one for the parents out there. Catholic scholars confirm purgatory consists of helping third graders with math for hundreds of years.
Yes.
Which, if anyone has a third grader, I can
imagine.
It's a struggle.
Yeah.
And then last one, little sports theme here. NBA provides LeBron with special whistle to call his own fouls. So any end, we got the NBA playoffs starting up. So that'll be
That's a fun
that'll
one.
be a fun one for any NBA fans. But no, those were pretty good this week.
Never disappoints.
Yeah.
Babylon
All
Bee.
right. Last thing before we get you out of here, we're gonna play a clip of the week on. I'm labeling it "Katy Perry Goes to Space," and you
Love
guys
it.
can give me your reactions.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Perfect.
It is the highest high, and it is surrender to the unknown, trust, and this whole journey is not just about going to space. It's the training, it's the team, it's the whole thing. I couldn't recommend this experience more. This is like up there with all the, different tools that I've learned in my life, from meditation to the Hoffman process. This is up there because what you're doing is you're like really finding the love for yourself, because you got to trust in yourself on this journey. And then you're feeling the love when you come down, for sure. And you're feeling that strength. So I feel really connected to that strong, divine feminine right now.
By the way, you're such a badass. I love that the month of April, you're like, I'm going to space and I'm launching my tour.
Is she feeling the love coming back from space? I don't know. I feel it's not a lot of love.
I don't know
I
about
can't say
that.
I've seen a lot of love coming her way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we sent. Blue Origin sent the an all-female. Do we call them a crew? I don't know.
Flight crew,
Like,
I guess.
I've heard
group.
crew, but I don't know if crew.
I mean, there were a couple legitimate people on this thing.
Yeah.
but
Pulling levers and steering.
a lot
Yeah.
of celebrities as well.
Yeah.
So, I just thought it was funny. I thought they were in space for like 10 minutes or something. So
I think so.
which by the way,
Not
would be
too long.
awesome. I don't know if I would
sure.
actually do
Yeah.
it. I don't know if, I don't know if I could do it. But
Yeah.
No,
but
that's
it
why.
would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But kind of, I think the participants of this voyage thought that this would be viewed in a much more legitimate way than I think it has been, and not just sending celebrities to space for a few minutes, which I think most people are viewing it as.
I think I haven't seen that exact clip. I think what really stuck with me is that she was saying that she recommends it. And I don't think this is very accessible to your everyday person. I don't know who this is being recommended to. I know she talked about her.
All your billionaires out there,
Yes.
we highly recommend this.
To everyone else who's getting invites. I'm not one of them. But
Hilarious.
yeah, I mean, it's certainly a cool thing. And I can see how if you had the opportunity, you'd want to say yes. I don't think that it achieved what they were maybe hoping it would achieve as far as the narrative and the messaging and speaking as a woman, I can't say that I feel any differently.
You don't feel empowered now?
Not, maybe if I was on the...
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
the funny thing is that like women like have been to space, right? Like I
Right.
think this is not a groundbreaking, moment.
Sure.
I think, in the same way that
Yeah.
we've had actual women astronauts, like actual astronauts.
Yes. Yeah.
Go to space. So it's tough.
Yeah. Certainly fair of them to say yes and want to do this. I'm sure
Totally.
it's an incredible experience, but I'll be waiting patiently for my invite. I think it might be a while.
Yeah, no.
Would you do it though? Would you guys do it if you got asked?
I would consider it.
Yeah.
I would
consider it.
I'd say give me a few days.
Yeah.
Give me a
I'd probably lean on doing it.
I definitely wouldn't do the first one, but I mean, now that
Yes.
it's been done a couple times,
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, no, that's why I said when we were chatting earlier, if somebody asked me would I consider it, absolutely. If you asked an astronaut what they were up there doing, I'm not so sure they would say it was a full on space fleet.
yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, like, are they astronauts? I think that's the other big question. Because to me, they're riders on a, rocket ship that is cool. But like, I'm not a pilot if I fly on a plane, right? Like, I'm a passenger.
Yeah.
They seem more like passengers than astronauts.
Yeah.
Give me a spacewalk and then I'll call you an astronaut.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't think they were the ones pulling any of the levers. Or like making
Right.
anything.
Still cool though. Again,
I think I'm with you on they were passengers on a very cool experience that I'm sure was very impactful for them and people involved, I'm sure.
and profound, you know? I
Yeah.
mean, and just imagine seeing the Earth, right in front of you.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear the Katy Perry song that comes out of this.
Oh,
That's what I'm waiting
yes.
for.
There will
Yeah.
be one.
I'm waiting for the release.
Yeah, what's
Yeah.
her song going to be like? That's going to be funny. I can't
I
wait
don't know.
for that.
Off her new album, Out of This World.
Yeah. I heard she sang.
She sang on Reentry or something, or she sang
Yeah.
on when they were up there or something. It's a Wonderful World, I think.
Oh, okay. So not one of her songs.
Yeah, they were like, they'd been begging her to sing something, and she's like, "No, I'm not gonna sing."
You should have
and
sang
then
E.T.
finally,
when
she
you were
like
up
sang. Yeah, there you go. Finally,
Yeah.
they sang like "It's a Wonderful World" or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
Yeah. Well,
for the vibes, I guess.
Yeah.
Returning.
I'm sure it was very cool. I'm very happy that they had that experience.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and because of it, Katy Perry has been featured on the podcast for the very first
Exactly.
time.
Exactly.
That is definitely a first.
She's making headlines.
I didn't know. I mean, some of these things that happen, I'm like, I did not have that on my bingo card. Like that's pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
So,
Such is life in the world.
but yeah, so good times. Well, thanks guys for filling in this week. I appreciate it. Always
Happy
good.
to.
Always a pleasure.
Having you guys on, getting to chat, even though we chat all the time anyway. Yeah, next episode in a couple weeks, we're going to have a newly elected Assembly member Stan Ellis on the show.
That'll be fun.
Super cool guy.
Yeah.
Definitely tune in for that. Just got elected in a special election to replace Vince Fong, who's also been on this show before, from the Bakersfield area. I had a chance to spend quite a bit of time with him a couple weeks ago on a trip to DC, and this guy is super cool. I mean, he is super smart. Done a lot of, started a lot of businesses in his career and just done a lot of really cool stuff. So,
he's great.
Definitely excited to chat with him and introduce him to the listeners. If you got ideas for future shows, you can email pointoforderpod@gmail.com. Listen on Spotify or Apple Podcast, and watch, subscribe, or follow on YouTube, X, Instagram, Threads, and Facebook at Point of Order Pod. And follow myself on X at Joshua_Hoover. Thank you guys for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.